Sonic Frontiers is one of those games that I've been anticipating for the last year and a half now, and I'm happy to say, now that it's out, it doesn't disappoint. It's not perfect by any means, but it really is a fun time, which is honestly all I really expect from a game. I could go in depth on the finer details of the game, the islands, the cyberspace levels, and the story, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. Instead, I want to talk about by far the weirdest thing in the game. The physics. The game's physics are somewhat of a talking point among the community, which sounds like a bad thing because that's usually what happens when a game's physics are bad, but thankfully that's not the case here. Instead, it's usually about the argument of momentum, which honestly made no fucking sense to me as there was never any mention of this whenever any other Sonic game came out. People have made a lot of fuss over there seemingly being no momentum in the game at all when it was first revealed, with people saying that it was part of his core character design. This is mostly false, by the way. The reason Sonic was made a hedgehog was because that he could curl into a ball, but the reason for that wasn't for rolling down slopes. It was actually so that they could have a jump be a ball so that the player could damage enemies at any point during the jump rather than just landing on top of them. That's it. Now that the game is out, however, there's a lot of things about the physics that I wanted to take note of because there's a lot people seem to be overlooking, as well as the fact that there's some stuff that's really fucking weird. For starters, momentum is in the game. You're not going to get Sonic GT levels of momentum, which actually, now that I think about it, Sonic GT is probably the reason everybody expects an ungodly amount of momentum from the games now. But you still do have it, and it can be used in some creative ways too. For starters, rail jumping allows you to keep your momentum from the rail and can be used to launch you to places or other rails with ease. It kind of requires you to have the full power boost to get the most out of it, but that's very easy to get, especially if you increase your ring capacity high enough. There is also the tricking system, which basically becomes not only a fun method of traversal if you can plan your routes well enough, but also an easy way to gain XP to unlock stuff in the skill tree. Basically, if you run off a sharp ledge, you'll be locked into this state where you can trick and all the momentum you had when running off carries over. If this happens to be sending you off a ledge or into lava or something, you can cancel this easily with a jump or a stomp, so it's not really the end of the world. Also, what the game counts as a ledge is kind of wonky, so sometimes stuff like this happens and there's not really anything you can do about it. Another thing that's worth pointing out is the drop dash and rolling all together, because rolling momentum is something more people need to talk about because, one, if you increase your speed stat enough, the drop dash is actually faster than the power boost. And two, the rolling momentum is actually very similar to the way SA2 handles rolling. The only differences I could find in SA2's rolling and Frontiers rolling is that in Frontiers, after a certain speed, your movement is pretty much locked for some reason, and after a certain amount of time in Frontiers, the roll starts losing speed as a way to get you out of the roll state, even if you're going downhill. The time for that seems to increase with the speed stat, but I still need to test that a bit to confirm that. Now here's where things get weird. In cyberspace, if you were to perform a drop dash or a roll in 2D, you probably would have stopped after a couple of seconds. Well, if you let go of the control stick, this no longer becomes an issue and the roll works just fine now. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why? Well, it seems as if rolling wasn't properly implemented in 2D and still tries to go in the direction of the control stick whenever it's used, despite the fact that the angle is impossible in the 2D section. Now that itself is weird, but it isn't even the weirdest thing about the physics. In fact, the weirdest thing about the physics in this game are all ironically tied to the boost. Oh boy, where do I even begin? Well, for starters, the boost in Sonic Frontiers is additive as fuck, which means that rather than the initial burst of speed being a set value, it actually adds on to whatever speed you're currently going at. So if you were to boost just as you hit the speed panels here, you can actually gain even more speed than if you were just boosting through them as normal. This same thing applies to the air boost, as you can see here. Just running off a ledge using momentum gained from the dash ring, you can add on to that momentum and carry yourself much further than a normal air boost. Now that's cool at all, but there's one notable feature about Sonic's moveset that makes this air boost absolutely fucking busted. You see, if you were to cancel a homing attack with the air boost, just look at this.
Come we get much higher. So high.
Yeah, needless to say, speedruns of the cyberspace levels have gotten interesting. It also makes a lot of sense now as to why the double jump caps your speed so low. It's not just for precise platforming, but keeping your run momentum and then air boosting would probably break the game even more than the air boost already does. In fact, I think you could actually test that theory yourselves using a mod Beats made, which I will link in the description. I haven't tried the mod out for myself yet because I don't want to taint my cyberspace times, but go wild with this and tell me your experiences in the comments. Now, you want to know the weirdest part about all the shenanigans with the boost? None of that really happens in the overworld. You can homing cancel, sure, but it's not adding on to any momentum you had before. At least, not to the same extent. You can try all you want, but none of the skips in cyberspace really help you that much in the overworld. It's incredibly fucking weird.